Hello friends, welcome to another episode. Today we're going to explore the SQL injection that we did last week a little further. We're going to try and add more data to the output. First of all, I want to say this is for educational purposes only. If you do not own the database or do not have permission to do this on a system, then you're probably breaking law, so be safe. So last time we left off with this beautiful SQL injection right here, and a single quote or 1 equals 1, and then a comment out of the rest of the query, which resulted in this we think query where the user ID is empty or true. And we would get all the rows of the query instead of the one limited to the ID that we entered into the system. So instead of the one here, getting admin, we would get all the rows in the query and no longer be limited to the single ID. This is all fine, but it only allows you to get more data of the query that you would already be able to get the data for. You could do 1, 2, 3 and get the data. So how do you go about reading other tables? Well, we need to go into some SQL theory first, so let's explore union queries. This here is a PostgreSQL database and it has two tables, which in this case both have 3 columns, so you see them here and right here. And suppose we have the query select ID username from users, we get the ID and the username. But now we want to actually join another table into this query, but not using regular joins or anything. We just want to have the entire contents based on our query just appended to the result set of the first tab. So I created a second SQL query called select ID description from schema migrations and combined it with the first one by using a union all. So now I expect a result set that first has the IDs and usernames from the user table, and then the union all will append every row from schema migrations using the ID and description columns. Important fact here is that the columns need to be aligned. It should have the same amount of columns over both queries. If we run it, you see that we have a ID column and a username column, but now in the username column, the description is also added. So let's apply this to our SQL injection. So what will we use in our SQL injection? Well, I know that my damn vulnerable web application is using a MySQL database. So if you look through the documentation of a MySQL database, you will find this MySQL user table. And that has a lot of interesting information like a username, password, the host they're allowed to connect from, etc. So this seems like a good idea to query this database and see if we can find some users that we can use further on in our queries. So how would you do this? Well, we learned from our PostgreSQL session, right, that we should use a union all, and then we will do a select star from mysql.user and we'll comment out the rest of the query to take care of that dangling single quote. But as you already read here, we have an issue. The application gave us an error that said the used select statement have a different number of columns. We know this because we just discussed this in the example that the column count should be the same. But how do we know what column count we must use? One feature of SQL is that within a select, you can give it a static value to return for every single row in that table. So in our case, let's take the value 1 and just return 1 for every row in mysql.user. And that will allow us to see if we should return 1 column or more. Still this error. So if we do 1, 2, So now we'll get 1 and 2 returned for every row. We'll see that 1 and 2 are returned, 1 in the first name, 1 in the surname. So we have 2 columns to work with. And now we can get data from that other table, but we only have 2 columns. We already know that there is a user column and a password column along with many others. So let's just first do the user and password. We'll add that to the query. And now we see that root seems to not have a password set. And the admin user has a password set, and it's hashed, of course. We can also grab the host, and we see that admin can connect from anywhere. Root has a limitation on localhost. The downside of this, obviously, is that 2 columns is very limited. So you now need to be very precise as to how you retrieve data. You can do a username and password, user and host. It will be very time consuming to get everything from a database. So next time we're going to look at how we can get more and more data. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not done so, click the subscribe button. It's down somewhere. It will allow you to get notifications whenever I post a new video. Thank you for watching. Be safe. Goodbye.